So yesterday, the Supreme Court told Trump, what you did with these tariffs, illegal, unconstitutional. You overstepped. And I want you to think about what a normal president does when the highest court in the country rules against them. They pause. They reassess. Maybe they work with Congress. Trump went on social media and raised the tariffs higher. That's where we are. That's who we're dealing with. Let's get into it.
Announced that he was imposing a 10% additional tariff on top of levies already in place, and it could be enacted using this different law referred to as Section 122, and that could be temporarily in place for up to 150 days. Then it would need congressional approval to go more long term. But as you mentioned this morning, he announced that he was going to raise that rate even higher. I want to pull up his social media post for you now. In it, he said, in part, I, as President of the United States of America, will be effective immediately, raising the 10% worldwide tariff on countries, many of which have been ripping the U.S. off for decades without retribution until I came along to the fully allowed and legally tested 15% level. Now, the executive order that he signed for the 10% tariff did say that it would go into effect early Tuesday. So we have reached out for the White House for any clarification on the timeline with this 15% rate, if it would remain the same. But he has been lashing out at the justices who ruled against him. We saw two justices that he appointed, Justice Amy Coney Barrett as well as Justice Neil Gorsuch. They joined Chief Justice John Roberts and the three liberal justices in the majority opinion. And during his press conference yesterday, Trump said that he was deeply disappointed and ashamed of some of those justices. When he was pressed on the two that he appointed specifically, he had some strong words. Take a listen.
Are you surprised in particular by their decision today? And do you regret nominating them?
I don't want to say whether or not I regret. I think their decision was terrible. Yeah. I think it's an embarrassment to their families. You want to know the truth, the two of them.
Okay, so did you hear what she just said? The Supreme Court rules 6-3 against him, and within hours, he's already found a new legal vehicle. Section 122, a different law, same destination. And it gives him 150 days without needing Congress to sign off on anything. That plan was ready. That was not a reaction. That was a contingency that was sitting in a drawer waiting for exactly this moment. You don't pull that out in an afternoon. Someone had that prepared. And then 15% the very next morning. So we went from the court struck it down to now it's higher than before it was struck down in less than 24 hours. I just want to make sure that's landing properly. But the part I cannot move past, and I don't think you should either, is what he said about Barrett and Gorsuch, his own picks. People he nominated, championed, got confirmed. And when they ruled based on the law instead of based on loyalty to him, he said it was an embarrassment to their families. Their families, not their judgment, not their legal reasoning. He went after their families. And Kavanaugh, who dissented in Trump's favor, is now his new hero. So the message is crystal clear. Your job as a justice is not to interpret the Constitution. Your job is to protect Donald Trump. And if you don't, he will come after you personally. That is not how a democracy is supposed to work. And the fact that we're just kind of accepting this as normal Tuesday behavior is genuinely alarming.
And while these tariffs have global implications, as you just heard from Will Ripley, some of the plaintiffs who sued the Trump administration over its sweeping tariffs were small businesses here in the United States. And while these companies won the legal battle, some still face personal attacks and seven-figure legal fees. This morning, one of the CEOs from the Supreme Court case spoke with CNN's Victor Blackwell.
It was a threat to our existence, and so we had to pursue this. And to have the court stand with us in our contention that it was an unlawful tax, and to also to reinforce the rule of law, meant a lot to us. We're proud of this. It's very difficult to assign us the task of putting Humpty Dumpty back together again when the government shoved him off the top of the wall. So I'm not sure how we do that. The approach that we've taken when considering this equitable question is to return our prices as quickly as we can to where they would have.
I need you to really think about what this man just went through. He runs a small business. The tariffs were killing it. So he goes to court, not as some political activist, not funded by a PAC, not backed by a party, just a business owner who looked at what was happening and said, this is an unlawful tax, and I'm going to prove it. And the legal bill to get to the Supreme Court? 7 figures. Millions of dollars. He spent millions of dollars of his own money to prove that the President of the United States was breaking the law. And he was right. He won. And then he said something that I think is the most honest line anyone has said about this entire situation, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again after the government shoved him off the wall. That's it. That's exactly it. The court can say the shove was wrong, but the damage is already done. Prices went up. Supply chains got disrupted. Contracts got renegotiated. Suppliers changed. And none of that automatically reverses because of a ruling. And while this man was still processing his win, Trump announced new tariffs the same day. So this business owner spent millions, won at the Supreme Court, and woke up the next morning in basically the same position he started, because Trump just found a new way to do the same thing. That should make you angry. It makes me angry.
Correspondent Gloria Pazmino joins me from New York. Gloria, what are you hearing from business owners?
Yeah, Omar, it's interesting hearing the CEO, which helped bring this lawsuit ultimately to the Supreme Court, talking about how he's hoping that prices can sort of bounce back, right? That prices will in fact go down and that things will normalize a bit after this decision. But the reality here on the ground, talking to small business owners, is that they are not so hopeful that that is going to be the case. And the reason for that is they point to this constant state of uncertainty after the tariffs were increased, even after this decision from the Supreme Court yesterday, and the president's comments since that decision has been made, including the comments that he made earlier this morning, have just created a lot of open questions about, one, whether prices can come down and whether or not there are going to be new tariffs that will be coming into place. Now, there are many sectors of the economy that have been affected by these tariffs, including specific lines of products that have seen a significant price increase. Shoes, for example. A majority of shoes that are sold in the United States of America are imported. And so for small businesses that are independent, they have been severely impacted by these tariffs. And so every day while they're trying to run their business, they're having to make a lot of decisions. It's a balancing act, trying to decide how do they adjust their marketing, how do they adjust their business plan to make sure that they are not passing on the increased costs to the consumer. Take a listen.
When there's all this uncertainty, it is difficult to, make certain plans. We're still going to have to do business the same way that we have been. We're still going to have to make conscientious choices about our buying, about how keeping our customers at the forefront of our mind at every turn, because at the end of the day, there can always be more tariffs, especially since tariffs are a tool that can be used in economic policy and foreign policy.
And this is what it all comes down to at the end of the day. Not the legal arguments, not the political fights. A woman standing in her shoe store in Manhattan trying to figure out if she can keep her prices where they are for one more week. Here's the number that got me. The majority of shoes sold in America are imported. China is the biggest source. Then Vietnam. Then Indonesia. All of them hit by these tariffs. So every single pair of shoes on those shelves has a tariff story behind it. Every single one. And this owner, competing against Amazon, against the brand websites, against every big box store that can absorb costs she simply cannot, made a decision not to pass those costs to her customers. She's eating it, protecting the relationship, keeping people coming back. That's not just good business. That's a person doing everything right in a situation that was created entirely by decisions made thousands of miles away by people who will never set foot in her store. And then she said, there can always be more tariffs. She's not being dramatic. She's being accurate. Because within hours of the Supreme Court ruling, there were more tariffs. Trump didn't care about her store when he made these decisions. He didn't care about the CEO who spent millions in court. He didn't care about anyone who actually has to live with the consequences of his economic experiments. And that's the thing that gets me every time. The people at the top making these calls, they don't feel any of this. The woman in that shoe store feels all of it, every single day. So here's where we are. The Supreme Court said stop. Trump said watch me. He raised the tariffs to 15% and started a war with members of his own party who dared to push back. The CEO who took him to court won and woke up the next morning facing new tariffs anyway. And the shoe store owner in Manhattan is just trying to get through the week. 150 days. That's how long Section 122 gives him before he needs Congress. And right now, he's already going to war with the Republicans who won't fall in line. This is far from over, and we're going to keep covering it. If this is the kind of analysis you want to see, subscribe, because this story is only getting bigger from here.